begin to go through some final notes that I made about the program. Want to always be up to speed in terms of what we do here. But I need to be more attentive to the people that's out here waving their hands and knocking on the glass and telling me to wake up. Want to welcome all of you here today. This is another Monday at 2 o'clock, and I'm very glad to have all of you here. We are here at allpointstv.com, and the program comes on at 2 o'clock on this network. And a number of other networks. I should have gotten here early enough to write them down, but there are a lot of different networks we are now reaching out to.
The big one for you is Rumble. You got quite a following on there, Rumble. RUMBLE.
Yeah, I heard Rumble. And I heard that they're kind of getting some challenges like Paula was getting.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that?
You're growing the numbers too, so which is good. Everything, I think having more variety or possibilities is a good thing for everybody. But when you hit Amazon deplatforming Parler, I think that just goes to show you the intent and into the depth that these people are willing to go to silence their opposition.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And it's a shame though that the conservatives, the libertarians don't have their own vehicle, their own media, because let's face it, we cannot depend on the mainstream media. We cannot. And it's been going on for 30 some years, 40 some years. It's nothing new. But by the way, I was going to also announce, so we're going to give you more details next week because I want to get them ironed out about the where people are going to listen in, and they can also tell us where they're listening into. We'll provide a number for them so they can call. Mm-hmm. And but I want to make sure I get all the details worked out with the other parties before I give that announcement. But I want to tease people with it to watch again next week when we go through that.
Okay.
And so hopefully everything is in place by then, and I got it all solid, so there's no quibbling and no chance for misconstruing it or whatever. So
okay, right. That sounds good. I need to get here a little earlier, so that we can put this together and make sure it's up to speed, and we can alert the viewers to what we're doing here. I want, again, to welcome you for the next hour. We are doing a couple of feeds here locally, and one of them is, of course, to WFOV, and that's 92.1 here in Flint. And one of the things that Paul Herring was attentiveness to what we do here. We're also very attentive to what they do over there on University Drive. And they are a wonderful station, making a lot of headway in the city and doing a fine job in their programming. We hope to be a good partner in terms of what we're doing here. I'm going to be talking about a couple of things here. The basis of the discussion today, though, will be the Constitution of the United States as it relates to the impeachment. And I'm going to come behind some of these scholars here and try to add a few things to what I don't think they're getting. And I want to say that what I'm hearing from a lot of them, and that includes people like Ken Starr and some of the others, almost all of them, who I don't think actually are getting how this process works. And since we are starting, I think we're starting tomorrow in terms of the trial of the impeachment of the President of the United States. The second trial that was based on the second impeachment of the President of the United States, by the way, because you cannot impeach a non-civil office holder of the federal government through the federal Constitution. You can impeach state civil office holders, but you have to do that under the state constitution. And I don't think they understand that in terms of why you cannot impeach a senator or a member of the House of Representatives, which I don't think, and I've listened to them quite frankly and very closely when they give the case of William Blount, who was unconstitutionally impeached by the House of Representatives in 1897. The Constitution at that point had been drafted 10 years earlier, and some of them that were in fact enforcing it even at that point did not understand some of the tenets in it. That say they were not necessarily the same ones in the room, and they have to interpret it also, and just because they're closer to the event does not mean they had a better understanding of it. And I'm not sure that the people that are further away from it have a great understanding of it as well. But we're going to clear it up And this, my voice on this process will be the final voice. And what they're going to say after I get through what I'm saying will be nothing, because they're not going to come behind me and make any correction on what I'm saying. I don't know, and I really don't know if it's a problem in the training, or they can't, or they depend upon the Supreme Court to tell them what the document says, or if they're reading it and cannot really digest what is being said to them in plain terms, is written in black and white. So I don't know what the problem would be there. But what they're saying, almost all of them, what they're saying is not true. And I'm going to say a few things here about it. But I'm going to also read, so you won't think I don't want anybody to think I'm making anything up. So what I'll be doing is going to the text, and I'll read it, and then I'm going to explain what it's saying here and why it says what it says. And we'll try to add to what they're saying. Now, what most of them are saying, almost all of them are saying, is that the process that we have right now is unconstitutional, because the president is no longer in office, and yet they're continuing the impeachment. And it's amazing they say that, because they're not continuing the impeachment. What they're doing now is they are going forward with the trial based on the impeachment that's already occurred. The Constitution, let me read this to you. I'm going to read Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. And let me read this part to you. Now, let's understand, first of all, how the Constitution is structured. And we're going to just simply consign ourselves to the relevant parts of the Constitution we're quoting today, referencing today, and that's in Articles 1 and 2. Article 1 sets up the legislative branch of government, and Article 2 sets up the executive branch. So the legislative branch set up in Article 1, and the executive branch set up in Article 2. Now, in Article 1, Section 1, that sets up the legislative body as the legislative body of the United States, so that it sets out the whole parameter of the House of Representatives. That's in Article 1, Section 1. But in Article 1, Section 2, what happens there is that it begins to break down how the House of Representatives is in fact constructed. So Article 1, Section 2 deals with the House of Representatives, which is one part of the legislative branch of government. Then Article 1, Section 3 sets up the Senate, which is the other part of the legislative branch. So Article 1, Section 1 sets up the legislative body. But the legislative body is made up of two branches. The article, therefore, breaks down then in the very next part of it, Article 1, the whole House represent the whole legislative branch. And then Article 1, Section 2 sets up the House of Representatives. Article 1, Section 3, the House of the Senate. So let me go over that again. Article 1, Section 1 sets up the legislative branch of government. But since it has different parts to it, the House of Representatives is one component. It's a bicameral branch, meaning it has two houses. The articles had a single house. It was unicameral. This is a bicameral setup. And so it has in it then two different houses inside of the legislative branch. So Article 1, Section 1 sets up the total legislative branch. And then Article 1, Section 2 breaks it down, so it's dealing there with the House of Representatives as a separate part of it from the Senate. So Article 1, Section 2 sets up the House of Representatives. Article 1, Section 3 sets up the Senate. That's how it is constructed. And I think you have to understand that in order to understand the impeachment process and not jump the gun that some of them are in fact doing. Now, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, let me read that to you. Here's what it says. Now, don't forget, we're talking about in Article 1, Section 2, that sets up the House of Representatives. Here's what it says. And we're talking here about now the impeachment. This is Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. So when you hear these scholars saying that they're going to take something that's taking place in the impeachment process to the court, and they're going to have the court intervene, I will remind them of what's found in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, where it says the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker. Right now is Nancy Pelosi, and they choose a Speaker based upon the majority party. So the Democrats have the majority there, I think, by 10 more members in the House than they are members of the Republican Party. So therefore, the House of Representatives has chosen a Speaker that is from the party that has a majority, that's the Democratic Party. It is shall choose their Speaker. And I was at a house, at someone's house this past weekend, and we were discussing various things. And I was asking the question of what word comes up repeatedly in the Constitution. And, it's a fun question just to see if they're thinking about it, because most of them want to go to the Bill of Rights, they claim, that's in the first 10 amendments. But I was asking them about what do you find even there except in Amendment 10, and what's the most common word that's used outside of the articles like the and conjunctive words and things. The is an article and a conjunctive term. Besides those connecting words, what's a commanding word in the document? And the commanding word in the document is the word shall. So when you read Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, you read this: the House of Representatives shall, they must in fact do this. They shall choose their Speaker. Nobody outside of the House can do it. The President cannot choose the Speaker. The Senate cannot choose the Speaker. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and then this part, here's this word shall again, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Now, when you start having people tell me and tell others and everybody else on the planet that they're going to the Supreme Court to intervene in the impeachment process, they need to go back and read what it says there about shall have the sole power of impeachment. The Supreme Court does not have any role in the impeachment process. Now, where they're getting confused, almost all of them, is that they want to jump the gun and jump out of the first article of the Constitution that sets up the impeachment process. And they want to jump into something else that's found in Article 2. And all of them are making that mistake. Alan Dershowitz makes that mistake. You're not going to say anything behind what I'm saying. Alan Dershowitz is wrong in what he's saying. See, I don't have the degrees from these highfalutin schools. I got both my my degrees above my bachelor's from a university they won't recognize, because they think that the Ivy League schools are the ones you have to go to in order to have any, credibility. They're not going to say anything. I don't have the Ivy League training. I have the training, but I don't have the Ivy League training. I'm from Easton. My degrees are from Easton. And and you say Easton, they want you to get out of here. Now I've been to the other schools, and I've been to all of the major schools in the state. But my degrees are from Easton. And you say Easton, I want you to get out of here. Okay, I'm not getting out of here. They're going to get out of here. That's what's going to happen. They're going to get out of here. Because I know they're from Brown, and everybody talk about Yale, Cornell, let's see, what are some of the others? Princeton, and Harvard. Those are the schools that have to be credited. Or maybe even Notre Dame, UCLA. They might, not too often, but they might talk about the school in California, and they might bring some others in. They never talk. You never hear them talk about Easton. So they are the scholars, right? And so when we come behind them and say anything, we're supposed to shut our mouths. I mean, it's like Chef. I'm talking about Chef. Hush your mouth. Talking about Chef. Yeah, and they've been shafting us with that nonsense. I'm going to correct them. And behind what I'm going to say here, they're not going to say anything. They may think they're qualified to say it. They're not going to say anything. And watch and see if they say anything behind. I'm saying something behind what they're saying. Let's see what they say behind what I'm saying. In Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, it says this: the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. It has no role in the impeachment process for any other institution of government. Not the president, not the Senate, and not the Supreme Court. Shall, you see the word shall choose their Speaker. Now, it doesn't say shall choose their Speaker from the House of Representatives. Therefore, the Speaker does not have to come from the House of Representatives, although I don't think there's an exception to it, but it's not commanded by the Constitution, because when it's commanded by the Constitution, the command is shall do it. There's no wiggle room. And there's a reason why that goes on too. Because it's what these people talking about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution have failed to understand. And I've been saying this over the course of my whole tenure here at the studio, and they're not calling in to say otherwise, so I guess they are either being quiet about it or they're not going to say anything behind my claim, because they know I'm out here. You can believe they know I'm out here, because I go in some of their corridors of power, and I say some things on their sites. And I'm not hiding from anybody, and I do write publicly every day on Facebook. I don't have to hide. I've read the document, and I know it pretty much in all of its components. So, and also the same thing as what I read when I was in high school, which was the thinking of the framers. I'm in that room with them. I think I know the mindset that was sitting in that room. In the Federalist Papers, all 85 of them, read those in high school and have since read them again. Some of them a number of times, particularly Federalist Paper number 10, which I think is the greatest of the Federalist Papers. But we're talking about the ordering of how the impeachment process goes on, and is being ordered to act a certain way, and it does not include anything that's not incorporated in the language of Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. when it says to choose their speaker, it doesn't say it has to be from the House of Representatives. They can choose an outsider and make the outsider Speaker of the House. It's never happened, but it could happen. It could happen. It's not denied in the Constitution of the United States. But they shall choose the Speaker within the body of the House of Representatives, and nobody else can do it. And since it goes further into that and says, shall have the sole power, S-O-L-E, the sole power of impeachment. It means that no other body can intervene in the impeachment process. So all these people are saying they want to appeal what occurred. It's amazing that these people will call themselves constitutional scholars and say that, because sole power means it's not disaggregated to any other body other than the House of Representatives, because sole power means they have the absolute power to do it. So the House has the sole power to impeach. Now, having said that, who can be impeached? Here's the people that can be impeached under the federal Constitution. Let me start with who cannot be impeached under the federal Constitution. Start there. The ones that cannot be impeached under the federal Constitution are the state office holders. And that's what is amazing to me when I listen to people like Jonathan Turley, who is on TV all the time, and they'll quote what happened in the William Blount case, who was impeached in 1797. The Constitution had been drafted 10 years earlier. 10 years later, they're trying Senator William Blount under the Constitution, under Article 1. And when it says that they stopped going through the process once he resigned, because it says there they didn't have jurisdiction. So they think, it's what Turley thinks. He thinks that they didn't have any jurisdiction after the resignation. And that's why they're saying that now that Trump is gone, that there's no further jurisdiction that they have in terms of going forward with the process of in Donald Trump's case. And they're absolutely wrong in that. And I've heard them say that the impeachment cannot go forward. You know something? You can't say things like that and be a scholar of the Constitution. And you can't even say what Lawrence Tribe said when they impeached Trump the first time, saying that the impeachment has not occurred until they walk it over to the Senate. Lawrence Tribe, I'm talking to you right now. Show that to me in the document. The impeachment in the House of Representatives takes place when you have a majority of the members of the House that have voted a verdict of impeachment. And what impeachment is an official accusation of wrongdoing while in office. In the federal level, it would be the impeachment of specific office holders, and they must be in the federal branch of government. So who does it include? It includes the president, okay, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States. Listen to that very carefully. We'll come back on the other side of the announcement about the break with WFOV, and we will explain what that means. We'll have to take this very slowly so the scholars can understand it. And I guarantee you they will be quiet. I'm calling them out. They're not going to say anything, but they're wrong in what they're saying. Okay, WFOV, I know you're going to take a break at this point, at the 26-minute mark, and I'm glad you stayed here as long as you did. We'll try to hang around this area before you come back, and we will pick it up on the other side of the break for you. Glad you stayed tuned up to this point. Okay, and those of you who are with us at WFOV and the other stations, we're going to continue what we're doing here. But the impeachment has already occurred once you have a majority vote in the House of Representatives. And as to what you can impeach a president for, the Constitution is non-specific about that. There's no specification of what you can impeach anyone that is the president, the vice president, and civil office holders of the United States. There is nothing in the Constitution, not one word, that makes a claim of what the president can be, or the vice president, or another civil officer of the United States can be impeached for, is not found in the Constitution. And when they say that you have to have this, this, and this in order to bring about impeachment, they are wrong in saying that. And if I'm wrong, show it to me in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, or in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. I'll read that to you as well. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. Let me go to Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. Listen to this part right here. This is Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. Now, we're still in Article 1, but now in the third section of it. Don't forget I told you that Article 1, Section 1 sets up the whole legislative branch. Article 1, Section 2 sets up the House of Representatives, and then Article 1, Section 3 sets up the Senate. So in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, here's what it says. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. So we've had the impeachment in the House, and once that has occurred, it's referred to the Senate for the trial. Now, why would that be the case? That would be the case because what you have in the Constitution is not just the separation of powers in terms of the branches of the government. Article 1, setting up the legislative branch. Article 2, the executive branch. And Article 3, the judicial branch of government. But you see, inside of the House of Representatives, since there are two branches, there's checks and balances built into the two branches, the bicameral branches of the legislative branch of government, the House and the Senate. So the framers, in their tremendous wisdom, had a vote.
Welcome back to WFOV.
Okay, and WFOV, I want to thank you for coming back. And John, thank you for reminding me of that. And you're back now. We're not very far away. We stayed around where we were when you left. And we are going to take this very slow, and we're going to get it right. And you'll understand the process when we finish, because a lot of what is being said is not but not only not clear, but it's not true either. I don't know of anyone that I've heard that has been accurate in what they're saying. They don't understand it. And so I don't know what they're doing at the other colleges. I know what maybe I didn't, maybe I wasn't relying totally on the training that I received. But I will tell you that what I'm telling you, they're not going to come behind me and correct it. They're not going to do that. They're going to remain. You have the right to remain. You have the right to remain silent, and that's not under the Fifth Amendment. You have the right to remain silent if you don't know what you're talking about. And from what I'm hearing about this, they don't know what they're talking about. The impeachment process is solely the responsibility of the House of Representatives, and no other branch of government can intervene in that. I'll tell you why in a minute, why that's true. But the sole power means that the House impeaches. No other body on the federal level can impeach. Now, on the non-federal level, copying from the Constitution, states have placed in their own constitutions, every last one of the states, all 50, have placed in there an impeachment clause in their document. And the reason why they've done that is because that would pertain to state office holders. So then I was asking earlier, who can be impeached under the federal Constitution? And those are these office holders here: the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States. Now, that's an interesting component there, because who are the other civil office holders? Let me tell you who they are. They are all of the office holders in the federal government that are appointed by the President of the United States. So I would ask this question here. Does the President appoint any members of the House of Representatives? No. Does the President appoint any members of the Senate? The answer again is no. So if they are not appointed by the President, and I said that all of the federal office holders that are in the United States, outside of the President and the Vice President, which they are elected now on the same ticket because of the passage in 1804 of the 12th Amendment that corrected a mistake they did not see at the convention in 1787. They did not see the problem that would be created by them having the president, but the vice president would be the one that got the second largest number of votes. The problem was that you would sometimes have a tie in electoral votes, and then you could not determine, because you sometimes have a tie, you couldn't determine who was the office holder. And then the vice president getting the second largest number of votes, you would have sometimes a person in different groups, Federalists and Anti-Federalists. So he had to nail that down. In 1804, they made a change in it by passage of the 12th Amendment in 1804. So who are the non-federal office holders? They are the office holders sent to the nation's capital as the representatives of the states. And why would that be true? Because that shall in the Constitution is the states speaking, and they are ordering the federal government to comply with the restraints placed on it by the states. And that shall is not the federal government speaking. That shall is the state speaking to the federal government its creation, the states being the creator of it. And they are, as the creator of it, they are saying, shall, so that the federal government would know the restraints under which creation has occurred. They are ordering the federal government. And that is why there is no Bill of Rights in the Constitution. I don't care what they say.
Point right there. I've always got confused in that myself. I've heard you technically you're correct. It's not in the Constitution,
No.
the Bill of Rights. But
It would be dangerous if it was, because if you don't itemize, if you say these are the rights and you don't mention the others, it means the other rights do not exist.
oh, okay. Because I try to figure out, because I've heard you say this before, and I mean, you're like I said, I checked that out. You're right. It's it was actually kind of an enticement, wasn't it? The Bill of Rights was an enticement to pass.
It was to satisfy George Mason, who not all George. Some of the people that were there, even though they had not left the convention at that point, some of them did not sign it because they disagreed. They felt the restraints were not sufficient enough, and they wanted to have a listing, one after the other, of rights they had. And so let me see, how would I say it? The switcheroo that occurred was to make it appear that there was a listing of rights. There's no listing of rights in the Constitution. What it is it's a further restraining of the government from encroaching on the rights. That's why if you read, I'll read the first one since everybody knows about Amendment 1. Here's what Amendment 1 says. See if you hear a right being given. The First Amendment, since we all started there. Here's Amendment 1. Who's speaking again? Who is speaking here? The states. So here's what is being dictated by the states to its creation, the federal government. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridge the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I'll read one more. Amendment 2. I'll read this part of it. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Does it say that the people have the right to, no, it assumes the right already exists. It's telling the federal government that right of the people of the United States of America shall not be infringed under any circumstances. It does not say except, which is a term in the Constitution used 3 times. It's not used here. Shall not be infringed. There's no except. There's a period there. So when you say there's a Bill of Rights, you're in very dangerous territory, because if you claim that there is an itemization, because it'd be a Bill of Rights, you say the 10 Amendments is a Bill of Rights. So then there's an itemization of the rights you have, and therefore that which is not itemized, therefore does not exist, and therefore government can come in and take that from you because it's not in the text of the Constitution. That's why it's so dangerous to then go around saying these things. And these scholars are very dangerous in saying that, because then the boundaries are drawn, and then outside those boundaries, that things are not listed, then the claim would be made that everything that's not listed, therefore, are not rights that you in fact have. But the rights, according to the Declaration of Independence, is inalienable. These are rights that you have at birth that predates the Constitution, which is 1787 in terms of the drafting of it and the ratification of it the following year. Okay, I'm going back to what I was saying about Article 1, Section 3. Here's what it says. It's Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. So a majority vote in the House will bring about impeachment. The House of Representatives is the only body that can bring about impeachment. However, in terms of the check and balance system that's involved in that part of the Constitution, it's not going to be tried in the House. They can bring about the impeachment, but let's have a check and balance on maybe they're not getting it right. It could be a political act on their part, and most time it is a political act. It was a political act when they did it to Andrew Johnson, the 17th president, in 1868. And what they did there in terms of impeaching Andrew Johnson, that was unconstitutional to impeach Johnson. Why? Because they were impeaching him on Johnson firing Edward Stanton. Stanton was in Johnson's administration as his Secretary of War. We didn't have Secretary of Defense then, we had Secretary of War. And the Senate, under the Section 1, Article 2 provisions that will confirm the nominations of the president, because the president has to be checked also, so he makes a nomination, but the Senate will in fact confirm the nomination. You see the checks and balances all over the document. It's not just in terms of the three branches of government and them having specific responsibilities that accrue onto them as a department of the federal government. There are restraints and checks and balances within each of the branches that are in fact created by the three articles that set up the federal government. So that in nominating, which is the president's job, to nominate all federal officers of the United States. And you agree with me that he does not nominate the members of the House and members of the Senate. So what does that give you? What does that tell you? They are not federal office holders of the United States. Who are they? They are the office holders of the states. They are elected by the states. One, the lower house, they call it. They are elected by the districts of the states. There are 14 districts in Michigan. So there are 14 segments in the state, carved up into 14 different segments. Each of them have a representative, because that's to be close to the people. I'm in the 5th district, so I have a representative in the 5th district. There are 13 other districts, and each of them have a representative. But in the larger context, the state itself, because of the fact that each state has its own sovereignty and they are co-equal in that sense, each one is sovereign in the statehood, then each of them have the same number of representatives. But the senators were supposed to be the representatives of the state. And that was a case until people not understanding the Constitution, how it was in fact configured, and did not understand why it was set up the way it was set up, would change that and shook the foundation of the Constitution of the United States. I would contend that the 17th Amendment is unconstitutional, but nobody would buy that. But I could make an argument that you cannot amend a document that changed the character for which it was in fact established and change the way it was intended to exist. And once you change that way it was intended to exist, and you change the character of it, then the changing of it in terms of the character being changed makes it unconstitutional. But nobody's going to buy that argument because it's added to the Constitution itself. And the idea is that if it's added to the document, then it becomes a part of the document. But it cannot be added to the document if it shadows the document. Okay, then I'm going along with me on that. Can't go with you on that one, Steve. Okay, fine. Let's go with this one then. The members of the House of Representatives and members of the Senate are not federal office holders. Can you go with me on that one? They are the state's representatives intended to be in the federal, up there within the federal structure, not as federal office holders, but in the structure of the federal government. Why? As the eyes and ears and the restraints of the state, speaking in their voice in that structure. The state sending its representatives to sit inside of the federal structure to restrain it. That's how serious they were about their voice being heard and being the dominant voice in the federal government. Not the federal government's voice, the state's voice. And so the Senate, made up of the state senators, each state having 2 senators, the Senate shall have the sole power to try impeachment. Now, here's what they're saying. They're saying that once the president resigns, you cannot continue impeachment. Look, man. Come on, man. I'm going to say what Biden. Come on, man. The impeachment has already occurred. You're not continuing the impeachment. The impeachment has already occurred. If they had impeached Trump, quote unquote, after he left office, that would be unconstitutional. Because you can only impeach a federal office holder. And if he does not hold an office, you cannot impeach. But the impeachment occurred before he stepped down.
The reason why they're doing this, one of the reasons they want to stop him from having his pension. That's what they said.
Not the pension. They want to do that because of what is found in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. I'll read that to you later on.
It's just punitive. It's ridiculous.
It is punitive, but there's also a fear as well. There's a fear here.
Yeah, because they don't want what he represents to continue.
They don't want him coming back on the other side of his presidency because they fear him getting in there because these people are in there in a club, and as an outsider, he poses a threat by being on the inside of a structure that right now they command. And you see what they're doing with the commanding of it. All kinds of things right now that are in violation of the rights of the people because these people are outlaws that's running this country. Biden is an outlaw. And that's why Josh Hawley from Missouri, who has some understanding of the Constitution, I must say, because I see how he's responding to what they're doing there. He is the only member of the Congress in the Senate that has voted against every one of Biden's nominees for his cabinet. And why is he doing that? Here's his claim. if you are not the duly elected president, then all your appointments then are unconstitutional because you're not the president of the United States. That's why he voted against each one of them. He's the only one that did that. Cruz didn't do it, and others didn't do it. You see, if you don't have a duly elected president, then the person that's in the office, although that person has been validated by the state's electoral vote, if the process is not constitutional, then the duly installed office holder is not duly installed. He's actually an occupier of an office that's not authorized by the Constitution, and therefore he's not qualified to make any of the nominations in the executive branch of government. And that's the claim that Hawley is in fact making, the only one that's making it. You can see why they don't want his book published. They don't want his book published. His book was denied being published. They're going to publish Hunter Biden's book, but the company that published Mark Levine's book, published Glenn Beck's book, published Tucker Carlson's book, will not publish Josh Hawley's book because of that. Because that's where he is standing on the Constitution, and they don't want a person out there doing that. So they want to silence his voice because this man has this, and they're not following this. Just like they're not following the science. They're not following the science, they're following these scientists, these quacks. The science does not allow them to do what they're doing. What they're claiming, all these different things about people being, can you imagine the scientists trying to convince people that they are allergic to the air? People have an allergy to the air. The air is poisoning people by breathing the air. There's a virus in the air. It's gotten in the air, and it's causing all kinds of problems, killing people. And you got to have a vaccine to inoculate against the virus that's in the air that you're breathing, and you got to inoculate against the air. If you believe that, you've been to public schools. No, not necessarily public schools either. You've been to school.
That's all public school is about anyway, is indoctrination and making you more compliant. That's all it's
100%
about.
now. Used to not be quite as all-encompassing and not totally holistic, but it is now because it's totally indoctrination. It's no longer the reading, writing, and counting. It's about total indoctrination. And they have little room for the 3 R's because very few people coming out able to read, and they like it like that. Because if you can't read, you cannot hold anybody accountable to what's written in the text. The text is very clear, but they can't read it. Scholars are not able to read it, apparently, from what they're saying. But you can only impeach a president, a vice president, and other civil officers of the United States. You cannot impeach in the House of Representatives. You cannot use the impeachment process to impeach a member of the House and the Senate. Why? Because they're not federal office holders of the United States. They are state office holders. So they can be recalled as state office holders. They cannot be impeached and brought to trial in the House where the impeachment will take place and in the Senate. There's a whole different process for them found in Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2. It's a different process for them. So we impeached the president. We can only do that while he was in office. But he was impeached before he stepped down, so the trial they're getting ready to have is constitutional, because you don't have to have the trial while the president is there. And you don't have to stop the trial going forward because he's no longer in office. That's what they're getting wrong. You can still go forward with the trial because the impeachment was made when he was in office, and therefore the trial on impeachment can go forward for a determination of the charge that was made in the House of Representatives. The Senate has it now, and they had it as at the end of the impeachment process. It doesn't be walked over there. You can walk it over there, but the impeachment stands whether they walk it over there or not. And now it's in the Senate, and the Senate's getting ready to hold the trial, and the trial goes forward under the constitutional mandates, which they are saying that it's unauthorized by the Constitution. It is authorized because he was impeached while he was holding the office of the presidency. And the trial is now based upon that to be certified in the Senate. Now, the question that you raised is, why are they going forward with it? And I end this point here. Why are they going forward with it? Because it's not just about removal. They say, well, he's already gone. Yes, he's already gone. But you see, the other part of it is Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7, where the president, if he is in fact impeached and then tried, and if he's convicted, they can then pass another provision that will keep him from being able to run for an office again in the federal government. And that's what they're trying to do with this trial. They're trying to bring about conviction, and then they're going to, if he is convicted, they don't think he will, but if he is convicted, they want to pass another provision that will then, under Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7, say then that they can restrain him from ever running for another federal office, because the president can run again in 2024, and they think he will do that. And that's what they're getting at in terms of why they're going forward with this process. Okay, I got to get out of here. We're not finished with it. We got a lot of it done. Now I'll do the rest of it hopefully next week. Until next week, we want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.